Black family vanished after leaving church in 1987. 18 years later, this is found in a junkyard. It began, as these stories often do, with something small. Something easy to overlook. On a muggy July afternoon in 2005, at a salvage yard just outside Shreveport, Louisiana, a rusted-out 1977 Ford Ltd. Country Squire station wagon was pulled from the back of the lot. The junkyard was changing ownership, and the new guy, a former mechanic named Jasper, wanted to clear out the dead rows. Vehicles left to rot so long they'd sunk into the earth like tombstones. The Country Squire wasn't on any inventory list. It had no tags, no visible VIN. Its back window was shattered, all 4 tires flat. The wood paneling long since stripped away by time and rain and rust. It looked like any other forgotten car until Jasper opened the driver's side door and smelled something strange, not rot. Not gasoline. Something like incense. Inside, the interior was mostly dust and mildew. But on the passenger seat, perfectly undisturbed beneath a film of grime, sat a black leather-bound Bible. Its pages stuck together with damp, but the cover still bore a gold-embossed name, M. Delane. The name didn't mean anything to Jasper. But to the Shreveport Police Department, and to certain people who'd never stopped looking, it was as if a door creaked open after nearly 2 decades of silence. Because M. Delane had been the father of a family of 4 who vanished without a trace on the morning of July 12, 1987, after leaving a small Southern Baptist church in the rural outskirts of town. The Delane family. Marvin Delane was 41 when he disappeared. A quiet man, tall and broad-shouldered, with thick-rimmed glasses and a low voice that made people lean in when he spoke. He worked at a steel processing plant and moonlighted as a piano player at weddings. His wife, Loretta, was a teacher's assistant at Midway Elementary. She wore her hair short and had a habit of collecting church bulletins from every Sunday she attended. She kept them pressed flat in a drawer at home, more than 100 of them. They had 2 children, Jasmine, 10, who had a gap in her front teeth and loved telling ghost stories at sleepovers, and Marcus, 7, who still struggled with his R's and followed his sister around like a shadow. The family wasn't wealthy, but they were close. The kind of people neighbors remembered as quiet but good. The kind of people who brought you a hot casserole when someone died. The kind who never missed church. That's why their disappearance hit so hard. One moment they were shaking hands with Pastor McClure at the church doors after service. The next, they were gone. The last sighting, Sunday service, had ended at 11:43 a.m. Several parishioners remembered seeing Marvin and Loretta ushering the kids toward their car, parked under a pecan tree out front. It was hot, sweat on your back hot, and the kids had been squabbling. Loretta was holding a paper fan from the pews. Jasmine was tugging at her brother's sleeve. A woman named Myra Harris swore she saw them drive off toward the highway, headed west. She said she waved. But no one else remembered that. By dinner time, Loretta's sister, who lived a few blocks over, began to worry. The Delanes had promised to stop by with peach cobbler after church. They never showed. By 10 p.m., the police were contacted. The following days brought helicopters, dogs, hundreds of volunteers combing ditches and woods. Billboards went up. Their photos ran on local news for weeks. Nothing, no accident. No witnesses. No signal on Marvin's old pager. Not even a tire mark on the roadside gravel. The Delane family had simply vanished. The cold years. Over the next 18 years, the case grew stale. Rumors blossomed in the absence of facts. Some claimed Marvin had debts and faked the family's disappearance. Others whispered about cults, or hinted at something darker, something never said aloud in daylight. A former officer involved in the case, Alan Copes, said privately in 1998 that the car just disappeared, like it was peeled off the earth. He'd interviewed a boy who swore he saw the station wagon turn onto an old logging road behind the church. But that road was chained off. No one found tire prints. No one believed the boy. Alan retired in 2001 and drank himself into silence not long after. The Delane case joined the long, tragic list of the missing, until Jasper opened that car door in 2005. The Bible, When the police were called to the junkyard and matched the Bible's name to the missing persons report, they had one question: how did the Delane's car end up there? The owner of the yard before Jasper was an old man named Harold Dupree, long deceased. His records were sparse, most of them handwritten, but a faded line item from 1991 mentioned unclaimed vehicle, Highway 19, no driver. The form said the car had been towed in from the woods, but didn't list exactly where. Just the words, no key. Rear seat locked. Keep separate. The rear seat. Jasper hadn't tried to open it. It took a locksmith 3 tries to get the old latch unstuck. When the bench seat finally folded forward with a groan of rusted metal, what they found was not what anyone expected. There were no bones. No blood. No remains at all. Instead, wrapped in a sun-bleached quilt, was a small tape recorder. Beside it, an empty juice box. And a children's Bible, the kind given out at Sunday school, with the name Marcus D. scribbled inside in blue crayon. The tape was intact. The label read only, July 12, when they played it, and this would later be confirmed by 3 separate audio specialists. There was a recording of a boy breathing. Then, a girl whispering, "Don't go out." Daddy said, "Stay hidden. Don't go out. Don't go out," and then, a sound. A mechanical sound. Rhythmic. Like metal scraping metal, slow and deliberate, followed by static. That was all. The Junkyard notebook. After the tape was turned over to authorities, the Shreveport PD reopened the Delane case. A new task force was assembled, this time led by Detective Ellen Harrow, a methodical, composed investigator known for never chasing ghosts. She reviewed everything from the beginning, including evidence from the junkyard. And that's when she found something Jasper had missed. Beneath the cracked lining of the car's glove box, wedged in the hollow between plastic and frame, was a small notebook, the kind used for jotting grocery lists. The pages were curled and stained, but legible. It belonged to Loretta. The first page began with scripture, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" Psalm 27 verse 1. The entries that followed were mundane. Notes about Jasmine's dentist appointment, Marcus's spelling test, Marvin's late shift at the plant, but toward the final pages, the tone shifted. July 7, Jasmine says she saw something again last night. A white shape. Same spot by the tree line. Marcus wet the bed again. Marvin says it's just dreams, but I'm not sure. July 9, I saw it too. A shimmer. Like a heat wave, but at night. Didn't tell Marvin. I just stood at the window. It didn't move. Just waited. July 10, woke up with my feet muddy. I don't remember going outside. July 11, church tomorrow. Jasmine asked if God can find us even if we're not on a map. I told her yes. I hope I didn't lie. Detective Harrow underlined the last entry in red. The notebook was bagged and sent to forensics. No fingerprints besides Loretta's. No blood. No biological residue, but the mention of the tree line and the shimmer that stuck with Harrow. She began combing through the area behind the church where the Delanes were last seen. The church grounds, the original building still stood, though its congregation had dwindled. Pastor McClure had died in '94. The new pastor was younger and remembered little, except that old folks said something weird hung over that summer. The back of the church faced a narrow dirt trail, choked now with honeysuckle and kudzu. Harrow hiked through with a small team and a metal detector. They didn't expect much, but about 200 yards in, they found a wooden post in the ground, eroded but still standing. A sign had once hung from it, long since rotted away. Nearby, half buried in ivy, was a mirror, round, handheld, the kind you'd keep in a purse. The glass was cracked but intact. On its back was a faded sticker, Midway Baptist Sunday School, July '87. Harrow picked it up. Held it toward the trees, and for just a moment, she saw something, a flicker. Not a figure. Not a face. But light, bent, curling along the edge of the reflection, like a ripple in water. She lowered the mirror. Nothing was there. She raised it again. There it was, the faintest outline of something behind her. But when she turned, the woods were empty, the mirror was bagged, catalogued as item 24A. Forensics later claimed the sticker glue showed no signs of exposure to the elements. As if it had been stuck on recently, the trail grew colder again. Until the janitor came forward. The janitor's story, in late September 2005, after news of the car broke locally. A man named James Lemoyne contacted the Shreveport PD. He was 71, worked at the Midway Baptist Church from 1985 to 1990. He said he didn't come forward sooner because no one asked. Lemoyne remembered the Delane family well. Nice kids. Polite. Always on time. But the Sunday they vanished, he'd seen something strange. I was cleaning up after service, right? Folding chairs, emptying trash. I heard a sound out back. Like a thump. Like somebody dropped a tire. He stepped outside and saw the Delane station wagon parked under the tree, but no one was inside, no Marvin. No Loretta. Doors were shut. Windows up. But here's the part that stuck with me, the passenger side door, it shut itself. I swear on my mama's grave. I looked up and bam, just swung shut like somebody slammed it. But nobody was there. He walked over, tried the handle. Locked, then he heard something else, a kid's voice. Just once. Said, don't. That's it. Just the word don't. I didn't stick around. Harrow pressed him, why didn't he report this in '87, who believe an old black janitor sayin' a car locked itself and talked back. The tape again, the cassette found in the Delane's car was sent to the state lab for further analysis. When played through spectrogram filters, a strange thing happened, a faint secondary frequency emerged beneath the static. It pulsed in rhythm, like Morse code, only not Morse. It was closer to something else. A language of sorts, buried deep in the noise. A linguistics expert from LSU reviewed the file and noted that some of the patterns resembled phonetic structures in ancient liturgical Latin. But they didn't make sense, except for one clear segment. At exactly 1:17 on the tape, just after Jasmine's whispered warning, came what sounded like a phrase, non redibus, you will not return. No one could explain why that phrase appeared on a child's tape recorder in a missing persons case from 1987, The Dream. 3 weeks after the tape was played at the lab, one of the technicians, a man named Ross Tilden, took a leave of absence. His wife would later tell police that he hadn't slept in 5 days. He said he was seeing a house in his dreams, she said. A house with no doors. Only windows. But every window showed the same thing, the inside of that car. And the kids were there. Still sitting. Still breathing. But they didn't move. When asked why he left, Ross said one thing, they're not dead. They're just not here. The other vanishing. By late fall of 2005, Detective Harrow's board was crowded with pins, strings, and scribbled notes. The Delane disappearance had become more than a cold case. It was an obsession. That's when a retired librarian from Baton Rouge reached out. Her name was Gloria Nevers, and she had a story, back in 1984, 3 years before the Delanes vanished. She'd catalogued a local newspaper article from St. Helena Parish, about 200 miles east of Shreveport. It hadn't made headlines outside of town. Barely a few columns on the 5th page, but Gloria remembered it because of the phrasing, and because no one ever followed up. The article, dated August 26, 1984, told of a family, the Reeds, who never arrived home from church. A mother, father, and 2 sons. Their car, a blue sedan, was found weeks later in a drainage culvert near Tickfaw State Park. But it was empty. No bodies, no luggage, not even keys. Just the car. Doors locked. No signs of struggle. In the back seat, a children's Bible, same edition as Marcus Delane's. Same red ribbon bookmark. Same sticker from Midway Baptist Sunday School, but the Reeds weren't members of Midway, they lived 2 towns over, and their church was not affiliated with Midway at all. Detective Harrow began pulling every case file she could find between 1980 and 1990 involving families gone missing after religious services. She found 3. All in Louisiana. All involving Black families. All within a 3-hour drive of each other. Each case had one unexplained object left behind: a mirror in the grass, a locked car with Sunday school items, a cassette tape with whispers. None of the families were ever found, the strange report. In December 2005, Harrow requested access to archived State Patrol logs from July 1987. Most were routine: DUIs, minor accidents, storm debris on the road, but one stood out. On the night of July 12, the same day the Delanes vanished, a trooper logged a report of visible flickering light near Bayou Bodka, northeast of Shreveport. The officer responded to a call from a local fisherman who claimed to see what he described as a glow behind the trees, like welding sparks but floating. When the trooper arrived, the light was gone. But he noted that a patch of ground near the treeline had been scorched in a spiral pattern. No campfire. No footprints. Just spiraled burn marks in the tall grass. No follow-up was made. When Harrow drove out to the same site 18 years later, she found only swamp and silence. But along the edge of the water, behind a thicket of trees, she spotted a metal stake jutting out of the mud. Attached was a small, rusted chain. At the end of the chain was a plastic keychain, cracked with age, shaped like a piano. Faded print on the back read, "Marvin's Music, EST 1982. She stared at it a long time. The woman in the photo. In early 2006, a new witness came forward. An elderly woman named Bernice Howell, who'd attended Midway Baptist for over 40 years. She brought with her an old church directory from 1987, a booklet of black and white headshots and addresses, printed annually. She pointed to a face. This woman. I don't remember her name. But she was here just a few Sundays. Right before the Delanes went missing. The woman in the photo didn't have a listed address. Her eyes were downcast. Her hair was tucked beneath a scarf. On the margin of the page, someone had scribbled in pencil, "Mirror Lady." No one at the church remembered her full name. No one had seen her since that summer. Harrow scanned the photo into the system. Facial recognition turned up nothing. No DMV records, no employment, no death certificates. But when the image was lightened and enhanced, something strange appeared. In the upper right corner of the photo, where the background wall met a picture frame, was a small reflection. In it, 2 children, one with braids, one with a gap in his teeth. They weren't standing in the room. They weren't part of the photo, they were reflected. The last transmission, in March 2006, while sifting through outdated police tape archives from 1987, a junior officer found a mislabeled VHS tape marked Animal Control, July 13, 1987. Expecting footage of a loose dog report, he played the tape. What he saw was 9 minutes of static, then, a sudden burst of shaky footage. Black and white, timestamped 4:12 a.m., July 13. The source was unclear. Possibly a traffic cam. The camera showed a desolate road, Louisiana Route 5, and then, the Delanes station wagon. It passed slowly. Headlights off, moving toward the tree line. As it crossed the frame, something else entered view, a tall, narrow figure, upright, trailing behind the car. But flickering. Intermittent. Like bad reception, the tape ended with a frame freeze and an audio distortion that caused the player to short. It was never aired. The original copy is still stored in a private evidence vault, the closed case. By summer 2006, the task force was quietly disbanded. No further evidence emerged. Officially, the Delane family remains missing. The case is labeled unsolved, presumed deceased. But in the years since, others have come forward. A woman in Mississippi who swears she saw Marcus in a crowd. A former seminary student who claims he had a dream of 4 people seated in a car with the engine running, unmoving, while a voice whispered outside the window. And Jasper, the junkyard mechanic, says sometimes, when he walks past the rusted-out Ford they never removed, the driver's side mirror fogs up, even in dry heat, even when there's no one near. The church basement. In April 2006, Detective Harrow received a call from the new pastor at Midway Baptist. During renovations, workers had discovered a hidden storage area beneath the old fellowship hall. It wasn't listed in any blueprints. A trapdoor, sealed over with plywood and linoleum, had been concealed beneath the water heater closet. Harrow arrived the next morning. The space was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet, walled with crumbling concrete. Dust coated every surface. But the room wasn't empty. Against the far wall stood a metal filing cabinet, rusted shut. It took a crowbar to open. Inside were church attendance logs, yellowing bulletins, and a series of VHS tapes labeled with dates. Most were mundane recordings of sermons, Sunday school sessions, bake sale announcements, but one tape was different. It had no label, the unlabeled tape. The tape began with static. Then blackness. Then, flickering footage of the church sanctuary. The camera sat still, facing the pulpit, empty pews. Late evening. Maybe after hours, a minute passed. Then 2, and then, the Delane family entered the frame. All 4 of them. Marvin and Loretta seated side by side, the children across the aisle. No one else appeared. They weren't speaking. They sat still, unmoving, staring straight ahead. The timestamp, July 11, 1987. The night before they vanished, at minute 5, the camera jolted, not from being touched, but as if the tape skipped frames. When the footage resumed, the family was gone. The pews were empty, but something was there. In the front row, barely visible in the grainy footage, sat a single figure. Dressed in white. Back straight. Hands folded, their head was bowed. Hair tucked beneath a scarf. Same posture. Same placement, the mirror lady. The figure looked up, and for one frame, her face was visible, eyes wide, and smiling, a voice on the line. Harrow took a brief leave in May. Officially for health reasons. Unofficially, she wasn't sleeping, but the investigation didn't stop. A junior detective named Monroe took over reviewing tips. One call stood out, a man claiming to be a former dispatcher at the Shreveport police station in 1987. He didn't want to give his name, but he remembered something. A call came through that day. The day they went missing. Came through our private emergency line, the one for officers and city officials. Thing is, nobody answered it in time. It rang 6 times and cut off. When we called back, it went dead. He remembered the time, 12:06 p.m. About 20 minutes after the Delanes left church. The weird thing was, he added, the caller ID said it was coming from inside the impound lot. But in 1987, the impound lot didn't have phones, not a single line. The dispatcher reported it, but the logbook never recorded it. He claimed someone told him to drop it. The Summer Bulletin. In June 2006, Harrow finally got permission to review the full archive of Midway's church bulletins. Loretta had collected them religiously, but the church kept copies too. Most were normal. Sermon titles, bake sale dates, youth retreat photos. But one bulletin stood out, the one from Sunday, July 5, 1987. Its final page listed the upcoming events for the following Sunday, July 12, among them, family picnic, immediately after service. Bring chairs, umbrellas. Youth choir rehearsal, 1:30 p.m. And then, typed in bold at the bottom, guest lecture, 2 p.m., Sister Eleanor, on the nature of reflection and faith. No one remembered any guest speaker that day. No one named Eleanor appeared in any church roster, event planning notes, or photos from that summer, and Sister Eleanor didn't appear in the next week's bulletin, nor was she mentioned in any audio recordings from the day. But when the bulletin was scanned and digitally enhanced, someone had underlined her name in blue pen, and beside it, in shaky cursive, she never blinked. The envelope. On June 19, a plain manila envelope arrived at the Shreveport station. No return address. Postmarked from Alexandria, Louisiana. Inside was a single photograph, black and white. A candid shot of the Delane station wagon, unmistakable, with its cracked tail light, parked in a dirt clearing, surrounded by trees. The ground beneath it was littered with what looked like shards of mirrors. Some buried in soil. Some propped against rocks. All turned inward, as if angled to reflect the car from all sides. On the back of the photo, written in pencil, they can't leave if they keep seeing themselves. No fingerprints. No DNA. No camera data. The envelope had been licked shut. Back to the junkyard. In July 2006, Jasper contacted Harrow again. The junkyard had been quiet for months. But now, something strange had started happening. Customers began refusing to enter a certain section of the lot, the area where the Delane's car had first been found. Jasper thought it was just superstition, but then he noticed something. Every time he walked through that section, his watch stopped, not slowed, stopped, always within the same 20-foot radius, and worse, the Delane car, which had been moved to an evidence-holding area, kept appearing back in the original space. Jasper thought it was a prank until it happened 3 times in 1 week, under lock and key, so he welded the driver's side door shut, but the next morning, it was ajar. The audio specialist, one final detail emerged in late July. An audio engineer named Franklin Dumont, the one who had initially analyzed the Delane tape, contacted Harrow. He'd kept a copy of the recording, against protocol, because he believed there was more beneath the static. "I reversed the file," he said. "Slowed it down, isolated layers." What he found was unsettling. Underneath Jasmine's whisper, under the scraping sound, was another voice, a woman's voice, repeating one phrase. "To see is to stay. To stay is to serve." Franklin played it 3 times. Each time, the lights in his office dimmed. He sent Harrow the file, then he left town. No one has heard from him since. The 1962 case file. In late August 2006, a retired detective named Wendell Tarsky reached out to Harrow after seeing the Delane case mentioned in a local paper. His voice trembled on the phone, not with age, but with something closer to fear. "There was another case," he said. "Long before yours. Same signs. Same silence." No one listened back then either. Tarsky worked for the Louisiana State Police in the early 1960s. In June 1962, he'd investigated the disappearance of a small family outside Derrida, a man, a woman, and their niece, who'd come down for summer break. They left a Sunday mass, Tarsky said. St. Bartholomew's. Never made it home. The case file was buried in state archives under the label Missing Persons, 1962, probable drowning. Tarsky had requested the label be changed several times. They didn't drown, he insisted. There was no water. What Tarsky remembered most wasn't the family's disappearance, it was what they left behind. The family car had been found in a shuttered photo lab, 10 miles off route from their home. The lab had closed years prior after a fire. No power, no business. Nothing. Inside the car, a single roll of undeveloped film. He'd taken it home himself. Developed it in his own darkroom. What he saw still kept him up. The film. Harold Tarsky mailed the negatives to Harrow in a padded envelope with shaking handwriting. Inside were 6 black and white prints, slightly curled, faded with time. 5 of them were typical family photos. A picnic. A girl on a tire swing. The front of a small white church, but the 6th photo was different. It showed a long hallway, lined with windows, possibly inside the photo lab itself. At the far end of the hall stood 3 figures, 2 adults, and a child, all of them facing away. But more than that, the reflection in the hallway glass didn't match. In the window panes, the reflections faced forward. And the child, the girl, was holding something that wasn't in her hands in the real image, a mirror, held high, pointed directly at the camera. The laboratory. Harrow tracked the location to a derelict structure outside Derrida. The building had collapsed in on itself years ago. Only the skeletal frame remained, but behind what once was the front desk, she found remnants of the old darkroom. A rusted reel, broken trays, and under a pile of collapsed ceiling tiles, a mirror-backed cabinet. The mirror was shattered, but on its surface, in scrawled black marker, someone had written, "She comes through when you see her in more than one place." Beneath that, etched faintly into the glass. 1 eye equals safe, 2 eyes equals stay, 3 equals serve. The mirror was tagged and sent to the lab, but that night, Harrow's dashcam, left running as she drove home, picked up a strange pattern of distortion. A fluttering, like light interference. It began the moment she passed mile marker 117. exactly where the Delanes tape had recorded the words, non-red ibis, the blue house. While examining aerial photography from the 1980s near the church and the junkyard, Harrow noticed something odd. In multiple images, across decades, a single blue-painted house appeared in different locations. Always near the vicinity of a vanishing, but never in the same place twice. In 1984, it stood near the Reed's last known position. In 1987, just outside Midway Baptist Church. In 1991, it appeared on the far edge of the salvage yard's lot, partially obscured by tree growth. The architectural features were identical: a white porch railing, a tin roof, a small weather vane in the shape of a cross. Yet no one remembered seeing it in person. The house appeared only in photos. Old photos, none taken after 1997, showed it again. The radio interference, a local shortwave enthusiast, Roy Clevens, contacted Harrow after hearing about the reopened Delane case. He'd been scanning airwaves since the 1970s. In July 1987, he recorded something unusual, a repeating broadcast. Lasting 22 minutes, looped on an abandoned frequency late at night. The message was faint, interspersed with static. But Roy had saved the reel-to-reel tape. The message, transcribed, read, "To those on the road, stay in the car, do not answer the knock, cover the mirrors, when the voice comes, pretend you are asleep." Roy said he picked it up 3 nights in a row. After that, silence. The tape's background noise contained layered feedback, a faint metronome-like ticking, echoing at 60 Hz, the same frequency used in old projector reels. The projection room, one of the Delane case volunteers, a local historian named Violet Reyes, suggested revisiting the Midway Church's youth hall. A space used in the 80s for movie nights and Bible cinema. The projector had long since been removed, but in the locked AV closet, Violet and Harrow found a box labeled, Youth Night, July 1987, inside, for 16mm reels. Each reel was labeled Lesson of Reflection, PT 1-4. One was missing. When played, the films began like normal Sunday school footage, moral lessons, scripture dramatizations. Children acting out parables. But partway through reel 2, the film glitched, colors drained, the audio warped, and then, footage of a woman seated in a chair, back to the camera. A mirror placed in her lap. She didn't move, a voice off camera said, "The faithful must reflect. Only through many angles may she come." As the camera panned, reflections of the woman multiplied, mirrored walls, polished floor, shards hanging from strings. In every reflection, she was smiling, but in the center frame, she never turned. The coincidence that wasn't. While comparing attendance logs from Midway's 1987 summer months, Harrow noted something else. The same name appeared 3 times, E. Wells. It appeared in a youth sign-up sheet for July 5, a visitor's guestbook on July 12, and, buried in the sermon notes from June, a handwritten annotation, Eleanor Wells to return soon. Needs projection assistance. The name had never been tied to the Delanes. No family, no employment record. Nothing in state databases, but one of the projection reels, Reel 4, the missing one, had an inventory note attached, checked out July 10 by E. Wells. The reel was never returned, and no other document ever referenced her again. The junkyard. Revisited, it had been 18 years since the Delane family vanished, 18 long years of silence, dead leads, and empty prayers. And then, out of nowhere, a car appeared, not just any car. Their car, on July 9, 2005, in the sweltering heat of northwest Louisiana, a rusted-out 1977 Ford Ltd. Country Squire station wagon was pulled from the overgrown edge of a junkyard on the outskirts of Shreveport. The yard had recently changed ownership. The new owner, Jasper Clay, was clearing out what he called the dead rows, the section where cars went to be forgotten. But this car hadn't been forgotten. It had never been logged. It wasn't listed in any salvage intake forms. No DMV entry. No VIN number etched on the dashboard anymore, just a hollow rectangle where the plate should have been. The vehicle had been buried under layers of kudzu and rust, sunken halfway into the dirt like something the earth had tried to reclaim. But when Jasper forced open the warped driver's door and caught a glimpse of the interior, he knew something was wrong. There was a Bible on the passenger seat, a black Leather-bound edition. Still legible, even through the mildew and dust. Inside the front cover, written in faded gold emboss, M. Delane. And just like that, a missing persons case from 1987, the kind of case even detectives don't talk about anymore, roared back to life. Forensic inventory. The Delane station wagon. The vehicle was transported to a secure lot. What followed was a full forensic workup. Here's what they found. The seats, torn, stained, water-damaged, but the driver's seat still had pressure impressions, like someone had sat there often. The glove compartment held a church bulletin from July 5, 1987, folded neatly. The rear seat, locked tight. Required a locksmith to gain access. Behind it, a children's Bible with Marcus D. written inside, also inside, a juice box, decomposed, and a cassette recorder with a tape labeled simply, July 12. And finally, the back window, cracked inward. Not from the outside. From within, that single detail chilled Detective Harrow more than the rest, because it wasn't just a wrecked car. It was a container, one that had been closed from the inside. Timeline reconstruction, July 12, 1987. In the wake of the car's discovery, Harrow re-examined the Delane family's final known movements with microscopic precision. The last confirmed sighting, 11:43 a.m., July 12, 1987, leaving Midway Baptist Church. Smiling, children in tow, expected next stop, Loretta's sister's house, 15 minutes away, never arrived. Assumed time of disappearance, between 11:45 a.m. and 12:10 p.m., phone logs from the Delane's neighborhood showed nothing. Number 911 calls. No witnesses reported anything unusual, but the Bible in the glove box, the same one Marvin carried every Sunday, had a folded sheet tucked between Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. It was a flyer for a guest sermon, Reflection and Faith, guest lecturer, Sister Eleanor, July 12, 2 p.m. But there was no record of that event actually occurring, no mention on the tape recordings of the service. No photos. No one remembered Sister Eleanor. And yet, someone had made the flyer. Folded it. And placed it in Marvin's Bible. The ink on the flyer was fresh. Not 18 years old. No smudging, no fading, lab tests confirmed it. The paper was from a batch manufactured in 2004, 18 years after the Delanes had vanished. Their own Bible was found containing a flyer that shouldn't have existed when they were alive. A new witness. The record driver, digging through scrapyard receipts, Harrow tracked down a retired tow truck driver named Emery Kent, now living near Baton Rouge. He worked under contract for Harold Dupree, the Junkyard's former owner, back in the early 90s. Kent remembered towing in a family car in 1991. From a dirt road west of Shreveport, no plates. No driver. Tires all flat. Doors locked. Damn thing was warm to the touch, though, like it had just been shut off. But nobody was inside. He hadn't thought much of it until he saw the Delane's story resurface. It was that car, he said. Same tail light, busted, patched with duct tape. I remember because I thought, that's a daddy job right there. Kent recalled the location, too, just off a now abandoned gravel road near Lake Claiborne. He drew it on a napkin. When Harrow followed the directions, she found what looked like a clearing, maybe an old parking spot. But someone had dug a trench across the entrance, buried in the mud at the edge of the trench, a small hand mirror. The glass shattered, but the handle intact, etched on the handle in tiny, jagged letters, "We stayed inside." Photos that shouldn't exist. In September 2006, Harrow received an unmarked package at her home address. Inside was a single photo. It showed the Delane station wagon, clean and intact, parked beneath the pecan tree outside Midway Baptist Church. Exactly where it had been seen in 1987, but the perspective was impossible. It was taken from inside the car, through the front windshield. From the driver's point of view, Marvin's hands were on the steering wheel. The passenger seat was empty. The rearview mirror reflected only static. There was no visible camera. The photo was printed on Kodak paper that hadn't been produced since 1986. There was no return address. Just a note, handwritten in block letters, they never left. They just saw too much. The car that shouldn't have moved, after Emery Kent's revelation about towing the Delane car in 1991, Harrow pulled every towing report, insurance record, and accident log from the region between 1990 and 1992. Most of it was noise. Forgotten vehicles, unpaid registrations, deer collisions, but one name jumped out: unidentified station wagon, Louisiana plate incomplete, possible match to missing persons, see attached photo. The report was filed in 1994, not 1991, and not by a tow company. It came from a park ranger in Arkansas. The Arkansas sighting, the report, filed on August 14, 1994, described an abandoned station wagon discovered at the edge of Ouachita National Forest, near the Talamina Scenic Drive, a winding highway flanked by forested hills. Ranger Jacob Terrell noted the car appeared to have been left recently. The hood was warm. There was condensation on the inside windows, despite dry weather. But no one was in the area. No tracks. No trash. No sign of a hike or breakdown. The photo attached to the report, faded, taken with an old Polaroid, showed a station wagon identical to the Delane vehicle, same cracked tail light, same wood paneling, same paint chips near the rear fender, but the most haunting detail: there was a Bible open on the dashboard. A thin ribbon fluttered over the air vent. Ranger Terrell had tried to retrieve it, but when he returned with tools to unlock the car, the vehicle was gone, no engine noise. No tracks in the gravel. Just tire marks leading in, none leading out. The report was dismissed as an error. No investigation followed. Terrell retired the next year, connecting the disappearances. This wasn't the first time the Delane station wagon had reappeared. After cross-referencing missing persons reports across the Deep South between 1990 and 2000, Harrow uncovered 4 additional cases where families or individuals vanished in proximity to a brown and beige Ford station wagon. None were identified as the Delane's car, officially, but each case included at least one mirror, Bible, or audio tape found nearby. 1991, Meridian, Mississippi. A mother and daughter disappear after leaving a church revival. The preacher later claimed he saw their reflection walk out, but not their bodies. A shattered mirror was found behind the pulpit. 1994, Talamina, Arkansas. Ranger Terrell's sighting. No official missing persons tied to the car, but 2 hikers were never seen again after entering the same woods that day. 1996, Jasper, Texas. A young couple's vehicle was found with the driver's side door wide open. The passenger seat had indentation marks, as if someone had been sitting there for hours. Inside the glove box, a cassette tape labeled Reflection Practice Number 3. 1999, Crowley, Louisiana. An entire church youth group canceled a trip after the church van's rearview mirror wouldn't stop fogging up. The driver said he saw children in the mirror who weren't on the bus. None of these reports were ever tied together. Until now, Harrow built a timeline. Every 3 to 4 years, the Delane station wagon appeared, just for a moment. Just long enough for someone to see it, or, in some cases, to disappear near it, then it was gone again. A survivor. In October 2006, a man named Peter Lively walked into the Baton Rouge Police Department with trembling hands and a story no one could explain. He was 39. A teacher. Quiet life, no criminal history. He said he'd been lost in the Ouachita Forest in 1994, after a weekend hike gone wrong, but his story didn't match the timeline. He believed it had been 3 days, but records showed his driver's license was flagged missing for 11 weeks. His family had filed a report. The search had ended. He was presumed dead. When asked what happened, Peter broke down. "I found a road," he said. "Then I saw the car. An old station wagon. I thought it was abandoned. But when I got closer, I heard children inside." He paused. They weren't crying. They were whispering. Over and over. The same word. Hide. Peter never opened the door. He turned and ran. And the next thing he remembered, he was lying on the ground near his car, the keys in hand. Clothes soaked. Watch broken. His watch had stopped at 12:06 p.m. The old Junkyard ledger. Remember Jasper Clay, the new junkyard owner who'd found the Delane vehicle, he kept digging after the car was hauled off. In the back of a moldy filing cabinet in the junkyard's office, he found a journal, leather-bound, stiff with age. It belonged to Harold Dupree, the previous owner. Inside were logs, notes, scribbles. Some mundane, some more unnerving. One entry, dated March 1992, read, "Car came back. Same as before. Still locked. Nothing inside. No rust. Just dust. Took photo this time." There was no photo attached. Another entry, April 1993, saw her. Reflection lady. In the tail light. Smiling again. Told me not to move the car this time. Didn't sleep for 3 days. And finally, May 1994, car gone. Again. But I heard them whispering last night. In the mirror behind my desk. Think I saw the boy. Same eyes. The final page had only one sentence, "They never left. They just loop." The repeating date, Detective Harrow noticed one final, chilling coincidence: every major event tied to the Delane family, the car's sightings, the disappearances, the radio transmissions, even the church bulletin for Sister Eleanor, occurred around the same date, July 12, year after year, like a ripple through time, like something was marking an anniversary. The man who knew, as news of the reopened Delane case spread through old circles. Harrow received a letter. Not an email. Not a phone call. A real, typed letter, postmarked from Natchez, Mississippi. It came from a man named Rayford Elgin, aged 78, a retired technician who had worked for the Southern Church Audio Network, a now-defunct company that once installed AV systems in dozens of Baptist churches across the Deep South during the 1970s and 80s. His message was simple: you need to look at who installed the projection equipment at Midway. It wasn't your church. And it wasn't your state. Someone paid for it in cash. And we were told not to ask questions. Rayford agreed to meet the installation. They met at a Waffle House just off the state line. Rayford was frail, his voice paper-thin, but his mind was sharp. He remembered everything. In April of 1987, he was dispatched to install a projector and mirror-based lighting system in a remote youth hall near Shreveport. The order came from a private client, not the church itself. He was met by a woman. Polite. Calm. Wearing white. No last name offered. She handed him a set of specifications. He remembered one diagram in particular. It showed a projector facing a mirrored wall, designed to split the image at 3 angles. Not for visibility. For reflection. He'd asked why, she said, so they can all see her at once. When he returned the next day to finish wiring, the mirror had already been installed. But there was something wrong with it. His own reflection moved before he did. He never went back. 2 months later, he read about the Delane disappearance, the Sister of Silence. In October 2006, a break came from an unexpected place, a convent in northern Georgia. A young archivist working in the church's storage building came across a box labeled Quiet Orders, 1987-88. Inside were travel logs and rooming notes from visiting religious speakers. Most were nuns, missionaries, traveling youth choir directors, but one name appeared on 3 different cards. Same handwriting. Same signature, Eleanor W. She had stayed briefly in early July 1987, 2 weeks before the Delanes vanished. Under order or diocese was a single word: independent. When Harrow requested more information, the convent sent her a single item, a photocopy of the speaker request form. Under topic of lecture was handwritten, spiritual multiplication through visual persistence. The phrase didn't appear in any known theological reference book, but the archivist noted that the handwriting matched a letter sent to another convent in 1984, this time accompanying a donation. The note read, "For your mirrors. So they may help more see the truth at once." The stranger in the waiting room. In November, Harrow visited an elderly witness from the original case, Mrs. Betty Langford. who had been the last to speak to Loretta Delane outside the church. They sat in the living room of a quiet home, sipping tea. Betty hadn't spoken publicly about the case in years, but now she remembered something. There was a woman standing in the lot. I didn't notice her before. She wasn't part of the congregation. Pale. Eyes like glass. Didn't move much. Just watched. Betty assumed she was a visitor until she realized the woman wasn't facing the pulpit or the choir, or even the church doors. She was watching the car, Betty said. The Delane's car. When asked what she wore, Betty paused, a white scarf around her hair. The final cassette, 2 weeks before Christmas. Harrow received a call from Jasper at the junkyard again. Someone had broken into the old storage trailer where the Delane station wagon had once been kept. Nothing was taken, except one item, the tape labeled July 12. But oddly, a new item had been left in its place, another cassette, unlabeled. Harrow played it alone in her office. It began with silence, then, faint static. The sound of breathing. Then, children's voices. Not frantic. Not scared. Just speaking, calmly. Jasmine, don't let her see your eyes at the same time. Marcus, cover the mirror. Then, a new voice. One Harrow had never heard before, a woman, soft. Calm. Intimate. The faithful who vanish are never lost. They've simply been seen in too many places at once. Then silence, then, in the background, a sound like a key turning in a lock, and finally, a whisper, so close to the microphone it felt like it was beside her. You're next. The gas station photo. On December 27, 2006, Harrow stopped for gas off I-49, halfway between Baton Rouge and Shreveport. She went inside to pay and, on a whim, glanced at a dusty pinboard above the register, found photos. It was a collection of snapshots people had left behind. Vacations, birthday parties, faded Polaroids. One stood out. It showed a church parking lot, and in the background, unmistakably, was the Delane family station wagon. But the car was parked differently than in all known photos. It was reversed. The tail light, the cracked one patched with duct tape, was now intact, and reflected in the passenger side mirror, a woman in white, standing beside a tree. But when Harrow looked closer, she realized the tree wasn't in the parking lot. It was from a different photo. The image had been spliced together, not digitally, but through reflection, through layers of mirrored glass, the foreshadowed return. As 2007 began, Harrow began receiving calls again. From strangers. From archivists. From people who'd seen the car on old highway reels. From elderly couples who remembered a soft-spoken woman knocking on their door, asking for a Bible and a mirror, and from a man in Tennessee who woke up in his own driveway, with an undeveloped roll of film in his hand and no memory of where he'd been for 7 days. When the film was developed, it showed interiors of a car. Always empty. Always dim. The last photo, blurred and overexposed, appeared to show 4 passengers sitting still, as if waiting. In the background, a dashboard clock blinked 12:06. Again, the return of July 12. The sun rose heavy and low over Shreveport on July 12, 2007, exactly 20 years to the day. Detective Ellen Harrow hadn't slept. The walls of her office were plastered with photographs, maps, and mirror fragments taped over images of faces she no longer trusted. The Delane case wasn't just a file anymore, it was her world. She hadn't planned on returning to Midway Baptist Church. But sometime before dawn, her dashboard clock blinked 12:06 a.m. and her car engine sputtered. The radio cut out. And in the silence, she heard one word over the static, come. She didn't tell anyone she was going. The church was waiting, the parking lot was empty, just like it had been in every witness statement. Dew clung to the windshields of 2 parked cars, modern, untouched. A layer of quiet hung over everything like thick cloth, and then she saw it, parked beneath the same pecan tree. The tree from every photo, every memory, was a brown and beige 1977 Ford Ltd Country Squire. The Delane station wagon, only it wasn't rusted anymore. It looked as it had in the old family photos. Clean. Well kept. The windows were rolled up. The sun glinted off the chrome, and inside, 4 silhouettes, motionless, entering the sanctuary, Harrow stepped into the church slowly. The air smelled of old wood, lemon oil, and something fainter, wax, maybe, or time itself. She moved down the aisle, passing empty pews. Dust danced in the beams of morning light through stained glass. The pulpit was bare. No one stood there. But something had been placed on the communion table, a mirror, tall and narrow, freestanding, like one from an old dressing room. The surface shimmered slightly, not with reflection, but with depth, like the surface of water about to move, and then she saw herself, only she wasn't alone. Behind her, in the mirror, stood 4 figures. The Delanes. Smiling. Still. But in the reflection, they were older. Jasmine, no longer a child. Marcus, lanky and quiet. Marvin with gray at his temples. Loretta, holding her purse the same way, but her face more tired. As if they'd been waiting. As if they had aged inside the reflection. She turned around, no one was there. The final tape, on the pulpit lay a cassette deck. A tape was already inside. Harrow pressed play. There was no sound at first. Then, Jasmine's voice, "If you're hearing this, we didn't leave. We didn't run. We just saw too much. More than once. More than we should have. Don't look in mirrors at night. Don't look at yourself when you're scared. She finds you in reflection. She knows when you see her, and when she sees you back. And if you see her in more than one place." Then came Marcus, his voice older, heavier. "She stays." Then silence, then, a slow, dragging sound, the unmistakable creak of a car door opening, then a soft woman's voice, "You followed the pattern. Now it's your turn." The tape ejected itself, the final photo, as Harrow turned to leave, her foot nudged something under the pews, a Polaroid. Fresh. Still warm to the touch, it showed a woman standing inside the sanctuary. Facing the pulpit, it was her, only in the photo. The mirror behind her showed not her reflection, but a white-clad figure, and scribbled across the bottom, in the faintest childlike handwriting, "We saw her. Then we stayed." The station wagon was gone. Outside, the parking lot was empty again. No car. No tree. No sound but cicadas and wind. Only tire tracks remained, like something had been there, briefly, like it had waited. The final report, the Delane file remains open, but inactive. Detective Ellen Harrow took an indefinite leave in August 2007. She never returned to the force. Her apartment was found empty, save for one thing, a corkboard with photos of the Delanes. Each photo had been altered, their eyes scratched out with mirror fragments glued over the empty space, and one final note, stuck in the center of the board: 1 eye equals safe, 2 eyes equals stay, 3 equals serve. No one has seen her since. The Junkyard today. If you visit the lot outside Shreveport now, there's a section fenced off, the dead zone, locals call it. The new owners never touch it. Grass doesn't grow there. Rain doesn't fall straight. Sometimes, if the light hits right, you can still see the outline of tire tracks, dried into the earth, and if you stand very still, some say you'll hear a tape rewind, and children whispering, "Don't look. Don't look. Don't look."